But regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
A stunning admission by President Trump that the FBI's investigation into possible collusion with Russia by the Trump team was on his mind when he decided to fire the man heading up the FBI, which was conducting that investigation, James Comey. It has been, to say the least, a remarkable week in Washington. Here with their insights, we have with us Bill Kristol, editor of the conservative Weekly Standard, Democratic Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy of Florida, Neera Tanden, who's president and CEO of the Center for American Progress, and Amanda Carpenter, former communications director for Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas. Thanks, one and all, for being here. Bill, let me start with you. Does that, combined with a statement saying that he was thinking about the FBI investigation when he made the decision to fire the FBI director, combined with his request for a pledge of loyalty, according to a source close to Comey, does that constitute obstruction of justice?
I don't know, but I'd also combine the statement in the written statement Tuesday night that the FBI director had assured him that he was not under investigation. I was with a Republican lawyer who'd served in Republican administrations last night, who I think probably voted for Donald Trump, who said all the alarm bells went off, the combination of the written statement and the comment that you just showed on television. And again, I think the media is sort of treating this as, oh, gee, another bad week for Trump, very entertaining. Sean Spicer has a tough time at the press briefing. You're in a whole different world when you're talking about an FBI investigation.
Congresswoman, Attorney General Sessions said he was recusing himself from the matter, but obviously played a leading role in the firing of Comey, is playing a leading role in the hiring of his replacement. Do you have concerns about that?
Absolutely do have concerns about that. We know that Attorney General Sessions recused himself because he had had contact with Russian government officials. And I'm somebody who's had one of the highest clearances in this country, and I know that
you used to serve at the Pentagon.
That's correct. And I know that there's no such thing as appropriate contact with a hostile foreign government. And so he's recused himself from the Russian investigation. I don't believe that he should be involved in selecting the FBI director. We need to have somebody who is beyond reproach in that position.
Amanda, do you think that there is something different about this week than all the previous fun-filled weeks of the Trump administration? Has a line been crossed with the firing of the FBI director and all the subsequent explanations and tweets?
Well, here's the thing. I think the strangest things about all this have happened right before our very eyes. I think to 4 incidents. At the convention where Donald Trump stood up and called on Russia to hack into Hillary's emails. Paul Manafort mysteriously disappearing from the campaign after the AP published all the money that he was getting from Russian sources that he failed to disclose. Flynn lying about the conversations he had with Russian sanctions that were in retaliation for malicious cyber activity. And now, not even the threatening of the tapes, but Donald Trump actually inviting Russian officials into his Oval Office and smiling and taking photos after we all know, all the intelligence agencies agree that they meddled in our elections. And he said, oh, we don't know how it got out. Well, either something is very wrong or you are a mark.
Something, just a note on that Oval Office visit, is the only reason that we have the photographs are because the Russians took pictures of them and then released them on their foreign ministry website, and then TASS released them. And before those photos came out, we had no idea that Ambassador Kislyak, who, Neera, as you know, is a central figure in a lot of these controversies. He was the one Flynn was talking to in the conversation Flynn lied about. Sessions. He was the one that Sessions met with was not forthcoming about, that required his recusal.
Yes, and I think actually even more important, if you look at what happened in January, the FBI goes and meets with Mike Flynn January 24th. Sally Yates informs Don McGahn, White House counsel, February 26th. It's so urgent, she goes to the White House to meet with him in a skiff, a place where she can have a secure briefing. The next day, Comey is summoned to the White House by the President of the United States and asked for loyalty in the investigation of the Mike Flynn matter. If there isn't a reason for a special prosecutor, there has never been one in our history.
But here's the thing. The special prosecutors, as you know, need to be appointed by the Department of Justice. So, Congresswoman, I don't think Jeff Sessions or Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein are eager to appoint a special prosecutor. I don't think President Trump wants them to. Is there anything that can be done?
I think that one of the things that could be done is an independent commission can be set up through passage of legislation that I have co-sponsored. What we're looking for, though, is a few good men or women on the Republican side who are willing to put their country above their party loyalty. It's really in the best interest of this entire country for us to get to the bottom of this issue with the Russian hacking. Make no mistake about it, they made a direct attack against our democracy through cyber attacks and the use of information operations warfare. And we need to find the facts, follow those facts to wherever or whomever they lead. And the only way we can do that is through an independent investigation.
And Bill, speaking of information warfare, take a look at this tweet from President Trump. James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. What do you make of that?
That's a little nuts. I'd say that also alarmed people who wish Trump, sort of wish Donald Trump well on the Republican side. I mean, whether there's a special counsel or not, there is an FBI investigation. That goes on. There will be an acting director, there will be a new director, and that person, incidentally, will not be a Trump loyalist because the Senate will not confirm a Trump loyalist. So I happened to chat with one FBI agent I know slightly this week. They are unhappy. I mean, they are going to prove that the FBI is an institution of integrity by carrying out this investigation in a full-throated way. The notion, Trump has this childish notion that you fire the one at James, there's no institution there. You fire an individual, James Comey, and the whole thing stops. That's ridiculous. So that's again where I come back to, and this is sort of Neera's point too. I mean, we are in just different waters than, oh, he tweeted something foolish or maybe something that will offend some of our allies. We are talking about a real investigation where people are now going to, I mean, James Comey is going to testify as to what happened in that meeting on January 27th. There's going to be, people will have to be put under oath. So this is a very different moment.
I know, but I would just say that you need both prosecutors and investigators for a thorough investigation. I think the reality is no one can trust this Department of Justice. Jeff Sessions.
Do you agree with that, Amanda?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, a lot of Democrats are asking for a special prosecutor. A prosecutor can only look at crimes. I'm not sure that gets you exactly to where you're going, because if there's no bright line crime, they'll say we're cleared. Donald Trump will say I didn't do anything wrong, when I think there's probably likely a lot of ethical breaches, bad judgment. So I think a commission might be a better way to go.
Let's know if there's a crime or not. Let's know if there's a crime or not.
I think it's too narrow to focus on that.
Well, but it's not too narrow. There is an FBI investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, people are being too silly about this. They don't launch these investigations just haphazardly for nothing. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence that would lead you to worry both about collusion in the campaign, whether or not that's a crime is a question, though, and then what happened once Donald Trump became president-elect, and especially once he became president.
And
I very much agree with Neera on this. That has to be investigated.
And
whether it's a special counsel, whether it's a serious FBI director making sure that it's adequately resourced and that they go ahead with a serious investigation, I'm sort of neutral on that, but it has to be a serious investigation.
Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to stay with our panel. Coming up, Democrats are threatening to bring the Senate to a grinding halt until they get answers about President Trump's decision to fire FBI Director Comey. What can they actually do? That's next.